Support for Audacious with Chion Wolf provided by a generous contribution from Suzanne Hopgood in memory of Frank Lord.
From Connecticut Public Radio in Hartford, this is Audacious. I'm Chion Wolf. Imagine you're a cow inside a large livestock facility. You're walking through a long, narrow corridor with metal rails close to your body, and it is loud. Metal is clanking. Men are pushing you forward with sticks. The floor is really slippery, and something is dangling from the rafter above you, and you don't know what it is. Sunlight slips through gaps in the roof, and then it disappears again. Bright, dark. Bright, dark. Your massive body begins to tense, and men start yelling at you. You slow down. Anxiety builds as cows behind you push their huge bodies into you, scared, confused, like you. There's an uneasy pit in all four of your stomachs, and everything in you says, stop, fear. Now imagine that somewhere nearby, a human is watching all of this. She's not there to control you, but to pay close attention to what you're experiencing. The slippery floor, the thing dangling from the ceiling, and all that noise. She takes notes, advocates for a new vision, and eventually builds you a much more peaceful, predictable environment. Temple Grandin is autistic. She thinks in pictures, and by paying close attention to what animals see, hear, and react to, she's redesigned livestock facilities around the world, reducing fear and confusion for millions of animals raised for food every day. Her work has shaped systems used by companies like Cargill, Hormel Foods, and suppliers throughout McDonald's global supply chain. And it's informed standards adopted by Whole Foods Market and others across the grocery industry. But Temple's influence didn't stop there. Later in the show, you'll hear from Dr. Kerry Magro. He spent his early life as nonverbal, and now he's a public speaker, autism advocate, and consultant on Netflix's Love on the Spectrum. He says meeting Temple Grandin helped him imagine a future he'd never known was possible. But first, we begin by going all the way back with Temple Grandin to some of her earliest memories.
I can remember things like finding a message in a bottle. That was really exciting. When I was flying my kites, I had a really cool kite. It was a little silver plastic airplane with wings that rotated, and I'd fly it by the beach. I just loved doing that. Those were some of the kind of things that as a young child, I can remember being, really super happy.
We are in our own heads. We don't know how everybody else thinks. For the most part, we can't read anyone else's minds. We don't know what those worlds are like outside of ourselves. But I wonder when you realized, what was the memory that you have of when you realized that you were not like a lot of the people around you, the way your mind worked?
I'm a total visual thinker. If I'm thinking about going to the airport, I'm seeing landmarks along the way. Johnson Truck Stop, Ritchie Auctioneers. You see, I'm seeing those, and they kind of come up like PowerPoint slides. Or in the old days, like 35 millimeter slides in a carousel. Now I see the Kodak carousel. That's how my mind works. It's all like little phone pictures. Then another kind of thinker is the visual spatial math pattern thinker. They think in patterns. And then you have word thinking, of course. And some brand new research shows that humans don't have to have language in order to think. Now, of course, I didn't know any of this stuff. So when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, all through my 20s, when I was out designing things and building things, I thought everybody thought in pictures. And I didn't realize till my late 30s that a lot of people don't think in pictures. And my first inkling was one time I asked a speech therapist, think about a church steeple. How does it come into your mind? And she gave me 2 lines. Just 2 lines, sort of in a triangle, in a narrow triangle. That was my first inkling that maybe some people thought differently. Now, most people are mixtures of different kinds of thinking. But I get in trouble for calling people stupid because they didn't see that if they designed something a certain way, it would break. And so I called it stupidity. Now I know it's that they don't see it.
So this new knowledge gave you some compassion for other people who didn't see the world the same way.
Well, that's right. And there are different ways of solving problems. I worked with people that were autistic that owned big, huge, gigantic machine shops. They could not do algebra, same as me, non-mathematician. visual thinkers inventing all kinds of mechanical equipment. But then you got to have refrigeration for a food processing plant. That's done by the mathematicians. So you need both kinds of minds to make something like a food processing plant, for example. But you see, I'm figuring that stuff out later in life.
So we need all of us. And I'd love to hear about how, when you first kind of came on the scene talking openly about autism and how it is in you, this was the mid-1980s, the Autism Society of America conference. Ruth Sullivan, who ran it, asked you to speak. Will you talk about that threshold moment for you when you maybe were not so used to the idea of speaking about something so intimate? Or was it like, yeah, let's go? How was that transition for you?
Well, my very first book was Emergence Labeled Autistic, and that was done back in the mid-'80s. And at that time, I was just talking to the autism group, so no internet. The people in the cattle industry, a lot of them didn't really find out about it until, the HBO movie came out in 2010. That really opened everything up. But then occasionally in the early 90s, I'd visit a plant. I remember going to a pork plant, and their buyer had an autistic kid. We didn't do any talking about pigs that day. He wanted me to help him out with his kid.
How much do you feel like you'd be able to help? Because on the one hand, you've seen one person with autism, but on the other,
Well, one of the things is, you gotta remember, I'm a consultant. And what do consultants do? They fix stuff. They solve problems. So first of all, I just have to ask the basic question: how old is your kid? Is he in good early intervention if he's 3 or older, not talking? And if they're not in early intervention, then I'd say, well, let's talk about how we can get him into a good program. Another problem is no friends. And where autistic kids get friends is friends who shared interests. I was bullied and teased in high school, and the only places I was not bullied and teased was horseback riding and model rocket club. So you get these kids into situations where they can have friends through shared interests. That is really important.
I was talking with a friend of mine about how I was going to be speaking with you, and his daughter has autism, and he was interested in your reflections on how much to sort of protect the child from the world and how much to expose her to the world. I'd love to hear your reflections.
Well, I think parents do way too much overprotection. I am seeing way too many teenagers, fully verbal, never gone shopping. Well, I was shopping when I was 9, and I had a little allowance. I know certain items that mother considered allowance items, and this is just the way it was done in the 50s. Another thing that was done with me, and I was very interested to read that Bill Gates has finally come out with his book, Source Code, that he's on the spectrum. Now, Mrs. Gates and my mother made us do the same thing. When we were young kids, like 9 years old, we had to be host and hostesses at parents' parties. That taught you how to talk to people. We also both sold things for charity. I sold candy, he sold some other stuff. Well, you had to go up to the house and you had to try to sell the candy. Mom didn't do the talking. You had to do it yourself. Well, that was very helpful to me, because too many, even regular kids today, too scared to talk to people. And there's a scene in the HBO movie where I go up and I get the livestock editor's card and I start writing for this magazine. That really helped my career. Selling candy for charity gave me the guts to go up and ask for that card. And these are really simple things parents can do. Church volunteer jobs would be another thing, where they need to be doing something on a schedule. Somebody outside the family is the boss. Walking the neighbor's dog has to be the neighbor's dog. And there's way too much overprotection. And now we don't throw them in the deep end of the pool. Driving's going to take a lot longer to learn. There needs to be much more practice in a very safe place, which I had out on my aunt's dirt roads. We don't throw them into multitasking chaos jobs, like crazy busy stores at Christmas. Let's avoid that. But one 12-year-old I just heard about recently became the entertainment director for the local nursing home. They love him. He runs bingo nights and all kinds of things like that. We've got to get these kids out doing things.
I wonder, and I know you've been asked this question, but I wonder what you think causes autism and what would change if we ever discovered its cause.
You see, in the mildest forms, it's just a personality variant, where you're more interested in what you do than in social. And then you have You might find some different subgroups, but the therapy is still going to be the same. The little kid intervention is super important. It's genetic mostly. And a lot of famous people are autistic. Bill Gates, Einstein. Einstein had delayed speech. I often wonder what would happen to Einstein in today's school system. You see, so if you got rid of the autism genes, I don't know who's going to keep the waterworks running. I'm very concerned. I went out on a gigantic construction job about a month ago. Biggest construction company in the world. They were building these giant tanks. And one of the things they're very concerned about is retirement of some of their highly skilled tradespeople that can do things like take a crane, place pie-shaped panels up on the roof of this thing. And I got a chance to watch this. And after I watched it, I walked up to him and I said, there's a lot of know-how that doesn't get enough credit. It's visual thinking know-how. They're very concerned about how they're going to replace it. I can tell you how we have to get those people. We got to put making things back into elementary school. We got to put all these hands-on classes back into the elementary schools. Community colleges now are doing a lot of skilled trade stuff. That's too late.
How have you seen the world reacting to and understanding autism? Have we been doing better? Have we been too slow? Have we been sort of close but kind of off this whole time? What's your reflection on that?
Well, the problem with autism is you're going from Bill Gates to somebody that has a whole bunch of other stuff wrong with them besides the autism, with a lot of intellectual challenges. But even those kids can do more than you think. I've gone out and visited some interesting programs where they're a 3-day retreat. One was one in Nebraska where they got them out on boats. One in Texas, they'd get them out on the nature trails. Another one was a surfing program. And I think one of the most valuable things that these programs do is the parents would go, you got to be kidding. You got my nonverbal kid on a boat? And they go, yes, and he loved it. It shows the parents that their kid can actually do things. My kid got on a surfboard? You got to be kidding. That's the most important thing, is to show parents their kid is actually capable of doing things. But there are some places where I have problems. I have auditory processing problems. Noisy restaurants, I have trouble with hearing conversations, especially if the whole table's talking. I usually have to talk to just somebody beside me. I still have that problem. I have a terrible working memory. So if I have to clean the McDonald's ice cream machine, I need to write down the steps and make a pilot's checklist. And if somebody doesn't want to disclose, you can just say, pilots need a checklist. I need one too. Just say that, leave it at that. And vague feedback doesn't work. When I criticized some welding on my very first job, I said, like pigeon do, the plant engineer pulled me into this little office in the boiler room. He said, you have to apologize for that rude talk. And Whitey the welder's upstairs in the cafeteria, and you're going up there right now to apologize. He told me exactly what I had to do. You can't be vague and say you're rude to colleagues. That's too vague. He told me in private. He did not yell at me. A real quiet voice told me exactly what to do. Thank you, Harley Winkleman. You were a wonderful job coach. Swift meatpacking plane.
What's one thing you wish you could experience more like so-called neurotypical people do?
Well, one of the things I see neurotypical people being so happy is they'll be in a restaurant having these really rapid back and forth chit-chat conversations where there's kind of a rhythm to them. And I can't even follow them because they go so fast.
What do you wish that neurotypical people could experience the way you do?
Well, that I can get so interested in something. Okay, I was on a flight to Spain in an economy class seat. But you know what was good about this economy class seat? Sunset over the plane wing. I just saw that, and then I did a whole series of pictures, like every 3 minutes, of the sun rising over the plane wing, geeking out how beautiful the black silhouette of the plane wing looked with the sunset. I don't know. I got kind of turned on by that.
You said that you were spoken to as if you were stupid in some cases.
A lot of people thought I was stupid because I couldn't do algebra.
Did you take that personally, or did that fire you up to prove them wrong, or a combination of both?
Well, when I did my projects that were shown in the HBO movie, and those are the things I did in my 20s, I wanted to prove I wasn't stupid. And I remember looking at one of my drawings I had done for the Dip Vat in 1978, and I looked at this really nice drawing I had done. And I almost couldn't believe that I had done it. And I'm going, I guess I'm not stupid. I said, this isn't something that a stupid person makes. The other thing, I wasn't afraid to ask for help. I didn't know how to do the concrete tank reinforcement design. Well, I picked up that phone, and that's where selling candy for charity helped, called up with somebody at the USDA in Washington, and I got an engineered drawing for the tank construction. I asked for help. When I started failing statistics, my first math class, I went right to the teacher. I was in a small college. He tutored me in his office. Then my master's, failed my first statistics quiz. I got a grad student to tutor me. I did something about it right away. I had to be tutored to get a C in statistics. But I asked for help.
Back to the slaughterhouse, when people see the HBO movie titled Temple Grandin, they'll get the whole story of what happened in your life that led you to slaughterhouses and designing them differently in a way that makes it so the animals are more comfortable and less likely to be injured or killed in the slaughterhouses before they're meant to be.
One of the things I did is I went around to every feed yard in Arizona and worked cattle. And I basically took design ideas that came from the ranchers' feed yards and moved them into the slaughterhouse because they were behind on their facility design. And I also observed, this is the first behavior work I ever did. And I didn't know I was a visual thinker, but I'd get down in the chutes and I'd see what the cattle were seeing. And they'd be afraid of a reflection, a coat on a fence, a vehicle with a shiny reflection, a string hanging down. And people thought I was crazy to get in the chute. I didn't know that a lot of those people, other people, were verbal thinkers. I didn't know that. But as a visual thinker, it was obvious to look at what the cattle were seeing. There were some curved chute designs, but I basically took all the good bits and put them together and threw away the bad bits and came up with new designs.
You said that you were able to get on the level of the animal and see the world how it sees. Will you talk more about
animals are not herd thinkers. I just did training. I do solely for Costco and McDonald's, and we just did a welfare training, and I still need to explain about, well, watch your animal. It stopped and it looked right at the piece of plastic that was moving. I have a slide that I show that shows a steer coming out of a chute looking right at a sunbeam. I show that slide to little children, half the hands go up. I show it to grown-ups, maybe 10% of the hands go up when I say, did you see that it was looking at the sunbeam? And you see, that's something that an hour later, that sunbeam could be gone. Okay, why are the cattle hard to handle now? Now they're wonderful to handle. Maybe it's a sunbeam. So that was some of the very first stuff, was to simply look at what cattle were looking at.
Do you eat meat?
Yes, I do. And I feel very strongly we've got to give animals a good life. The good news is cattle handling has really improved. People are no longer screaming at cattle, electric prodding them, beating them up. Handling is really improved. But now we're getting a lot of things wrong with animals. Foot conformation problems, heart issues. I'm going to bash on the pets, too. People are breeding naked dwarf cats with legs that break. You have horses with, I just read about the latest horrendous thing that certain cutting horse genetics can get, where the attachments that hold the skin on aren't right. So when you first saddle the horse, it rips their skin. We should not breed that kind of stuff. I feel very strongly about that. We've got to breed animals that are functional. Don't breed bulldogs that can't breathe. Boy, I can tell you, I'm really getting on the warpath on some of this breeding.
That was author, educator, and autism advocate, Temple Grandin. When we get back, Temple ponders the big questions and what really counts.
I used to look for the ultimate meaning of life. I don't do that anymore. I've got to think about what I'm doing here. Are the things I do here, when a parent says to me, my kid went to college because of your book, that's the important thing. That's the kind of stuff that matters.
I'm Chion Wolf. This is Audacious. Stay with me. This is Audacious. I'm Chion Wolf.
My name is Temple Grandin. I'm not like other people. I think in pictures, and I connect them.
That's not Temple Grandin. I mean, it is Temple Grandin, but portrayed by Claire Danes in the 2010 HBO biopic. The film won 7 Emmy Awards, including Outstanding Made-for-Television Movie, and Danes earned the Emmy for Outstanding Lead Actress in a Miniseries or Movie. So after this film made its debut, millions of people got a glimpse inside Temple's world. They started to see that autism doesn't look one way. People who live with autism don't think one way or move through life the same way. In a little bit, you'll meet Dr. Kerry Magro. He was nonverbal until the age of 2.5, and now he's a public speaker and a consultant on Netflix's Love on the Spectrum. But let's get back to Temple Grandin. Here's another clip from the HBO movie about her life. In this scene, Temple's meeting with plant managers at a slaughterhouse, proposing changes to the physical layout of the plant.
I'm sorry, Miss Grandin. It's clear you just don't have the experience to design something like this.
The walls are solid, so the cattle won't be distracted by light or movement outside. They balk at unexpected things.
I'm sure that's nice for the cattle, but the cost, Miss...
How much money does it cost you to pay handlers to prod the cattle along and then hold them back when they stampede? Yeah. How many times a day do your chutes stop because of pileups? Yeah. How many cows break a leg and bring everything to a halt? With my system, there'd be none of that. There'd be a steady, calm flow.
Well, that sounds great, but you don't have any idea whether it'll work or not.
But I do. I'm like Nikola Tesla or Thomas Edison. I know my system will work because I've been through it 1,000 times in my head. I can see a chute just as a cattle will because that's something my autism lets me do. I can walk through a plan in my mind, examining every beam and every rivet. Well, you just see a plan, but I'm walking through the whole plant.
I want to move on to your movie. I've been excited to talk to you about it because of a reason that you don't know yet. You and I have actually been in proximity in real life of each other back at the Emmy Awards in 2010.
Oh, yes, I remember that really well.
Yeah, me too. My brother was in Mad Men, and they were nominated, and I went with him. So I was on the red carpet seeing all these celebrities, and I'd never been in this situation before, and it was so cool.
Yeah, I never had either.
Yeah, and I only really got starstruck when I saw you in your black shirt and your red tie, and I was like, oh man, this is amazing. Seeing you on the red carpet was exhilarating. So if it was that exhilarating for me, I would love to hear what it was like for you.
It was just really exciting. Nobody knows until that little card is ripped open, and they have big, giant print on the little card. So if you don't have your glasses, you can still read it. Nobody knows until you rip open that little piece of cardboard. So it's really exciting. And then, it started winning all these awards. I was jumping up and down, and the mobile cam would come over to me. Then I remember when I said to my mother, I know you're nervous, now stand up. And the mobile camera went over to her. And then after that, I got recognized in the airport a lot more.
How did that feel?
Well, I feel it's a responsibility that a lot of kids look up to me. I've always got to be on my best behavior when I'm in places like the airport. The only time I ever got mad at somebody at the airport is I came out of the toilet stall and a lady shoved an iPhone in my face, and I got mad.
Oh.
And I said, not in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do draw the line there.
I would love to hear about making the movie and seeing the amazing Claire Danes learn you. What was that like?
It was like a construction project, except a fancier catering on the job. It was just like construction. You get a good project if you have the right team. We got to go back to Emily Gerson-Sains, the producer. She's also the mother of an adult, severe autistic adult. And she wanted that movie to be right. And she had to assemble the right team. And that took 10 years. And I had a lot of feedback with them during the writing phase. And then when they hired Claire Danes, I looked her up with her blonde hair and I go, that's not going to work. And then what they did is they stuffed her hair up under a wig and they gave her all these ancient VHS tapes that I dug up. And she became me. And during an interview, in fact, it happened to be on NPR, they were interviewing me and playing movie clips. I almost mixed this up. That's how good she got on my voice. And the visual thinking is shown absolutely accurately in that movie, which I'm very pleased about. The projects are also accurate.
After this movie came out, all of a sudden, so many people knew your name, so many people knew your story. You are all of a sudden really elevated in terms of the autism community and being someone representative of the autism community, which on the one hand, I imagine is very empowering and exciting because you've been living your whole life to speak out about what your experience is like and what the experience of others may be like. And on the other hand, you're just one person and you don't represent everybody. I'd like to hear about that sort of tension.
Well, I want to see the kids that think differently be successful because professionally, I worked with people that owned big machine shops. Can't do algebra, 20 patents each. And they just started out with like a shop class at school or working on cars. And these people aren't getting replaced. And we need these people. And we need our non-mathematicians. And I'm very concerned that my kind of mind's getting screened out. I can't do algebra. I can't do higher math. I can do my arithmetic. Teach me practical math. Teach me how to size hydraulic cylinders. Teach me how to calculate the volume of a tank. And so one of the things I'm really concerned about, and I write about in my book, Visual Thinking, is I'm worried that our non-mathematicians are going to get screened out. Also, we're doing a lousy job with our math kids. I am hearing story after story of a little fourth grader bored to death in school. He needs to be on a laptop taking high school math. I'm not suggesting putting him in high school. And they give me all these BS reasons why they can't do that. I can tell you, China's developing their math kids. They're going to whoop our butt. They develop their math kids. And it takes a visual thinker who can't do math to see that we're not developing our math kids. Because autism comes in a math kid type and a non-math visual thinker type. Also, there's another type, it's a word fact mind. And they can be extremely good at customer service and specialized retail for specialized knowledge of a product. Don't sell you the most expensive car, the most expensive business insurance. Sell you what you need.
I have a bunch of questions that are kind of random. Are you into that?
Yep, all right, that's fine.
All right, cool. What is a sensory experience you love that other people might not understand?
Well, I was a seeker of deep pressure, and I made my squeezing machine, and that helped calm me down. I was a definitely deep pressure seeker. I remember one time galloping really fast on a horse. That was very thrilling. Those are some of the sensory things that I liked.
If you could come back in your next life as an animal, which one would it be?
Well, there's some cattle that live out on pasture that have a really good life. In fact, I wrote a paper on grazing because people were saying, well, cattle are awful things. We ought to get rid of them. They wreck the environment. What people don't realize is 20% of the world's land can only be grazed. There's not enough water. And if you do it right and you rotate your pastures right, you improve the land. Has to be done right. I can't emphasize that enough.
What's your favorite smell?
A wonderful smoky smell of my grandfather's fireplace where we went in the summer. But you see, I see a picture first. Then I smell chocolate. So there's a box of chocolates in my refrigerator. I see them first before I smell them.
You are sensitive to sound. What is your most favorite sound?
Well, there's some music I really like. In fact, a brain scan showed that when I listen to one of my favorite songs, the lyrics activate visual parts of the brain.
What song?
It was Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin.
If there's a bustle in your hedgerow, don't be alone there. It's just a sprinkling for the May Queen. Yes, there are two paths you can go by, but in the long run, there's still time to change the road you're on.
What's your least favorite sound?
Oh, the thing in the car, the seatbelt beeping, the backing up a truck and it's beeping. That I find is really annoying.
What's the origin of your name, Temple?
It's an old family surname. It's actually my middle name. And I've always been called Temple until TSA forced me to put my full passport name on plane tickets, which is actually Mary Temple Grandin. So TSA will say, thank you, Mary. But professionally, I've always been Temple Grandin.
Your Western cowboy shirts are so you. It's like part of the uniform as far as I can
Yeah,
tell.
that's right. It is the uniform. And these really good Western shirts. So this one is a shirt that I got too fat to fit in, that I can now fit in again because I had to go gluten-free. And let me tell you, there's many plates of cookies now that I walk right by and I don't eat them because I get heartburn from them. And I can now wear this shirt.
Do you have a favorite one of those shirts?
If I can only have one shirt, it's going to be one of the old shirts that I can just wash with shampoo, hang it on a hotel door, and it's dry the next day.
I have end of life questions for you. Those are my favorite.
Okay, they are okay.
What do you think happens after we die?
Well, I have behind me a vintage poster of the Hubble Space Telescope, early pictures, and it shows hundreds of galaxies, not stars, galaxies. And the scientist that did that picture pointed the Hubble at nothing, what they call dark space. And everybody thought he was crazy to waste observing time looking at nothing. And he found everything when he looked at nothing. So I don't know. I used to look for like the ultimate meaning of life. I don't do that anymore. I've got to think about what I'm doing here. Are the things I do here when a parent says to me, my kid went to college because of your book, that's the important thing. That's the kind of stuff that matters.
What do you think about the idea of God or some higher power?
Well, I just look at all those galaxies out there. I'm a Star Trek fan.
Me too.
There's got to be some Class M planets out there. That's Star Trek's terminology for a planet that will support life, Class M planets. There's got to be some other beings out there. We spend quite a lot of money looking for them, in fact.
When was the last time you felt awe and wonder?
Well, sometimes I look up at the heavens. Now, right now we have so much light pollution, you can't see it here. But when I get out on a ranch somewhere, you can really see it.
Well, Dr. Temple Grandin, thank you so much for all you've done, and thank you so much for talking with me.
It's been great to talk to you.
After the break, meet Dr. Kerry Magro and hear about his journey from childhood to purpose.
Autism, while gave me a lot of limitations growing up, has given me some of my best key strengths today.
I'm Kyone Wolf. This is Audacious. Stay tuned. This is Audacious. I'm Kyone Wolf. Dr. Kerry Magro was diagnosed with autism when he was a kid after being nonverbal early on. But today, well, thanks for coming to his TED Talk.
Today, I'm happy to say I have a full-time job with the national organization Autism Speaks. I have been able to not only get a master's in strategic communications, but also get to travel the country as a national motivational speaker, talking about autism awareness, talking about disability awareness.
Kerry's also a writer and an advisor on Love on the Spectrum. That's a Netflix docu-series that follows autistic adults and people with Down syndrome as they navigate dating and relationships. Because seeing neurodivergent adults living full, multi-dimensional lives matters. And Kerry's consulting extends beyond reality television. He's also worked on HBO's Mrs. Fletcher to help ensure an authentic portrayal of an autistic character, and on the film Joyful Noise, advising on sensory self-regulation. He's also the author of several books, including Autism and Falling in Love, and he speaks around the world about autism, representation, and relationships. And when Kerry met Temple Grandin at a conference more than 10 years ago, he says it changed the way he understood what his own future could be. But what about his past? I asked Kerry when he first realized he wasn't like most kids.
It was when I was 3.5. Actually, ironically enough, walked in on my parents watching the movie Rain Man. because they were still trying to figure out my autism diagnosis. It had been a year into them trying to get a formal diagnosis, and they had been on wait list and had a lot of people just closing the door on their faces in terms of getting a diagnosis because it wasn't really prevalent. Like it wasn't as prevalent in the early 90s. So long story short, I walked in on my parents watching Rain Man, and I kind of had an aha moment where I was like seeing someone with like social limitations, someone with like laser focused key interests. And then I was like thinking to myself, like, oh, but he's not like Tom Cruise in the movie. He's completely different compared to other individuals. And that's when kind of a light bulb moment started to hit. And I was like, wow, I'm a little bit different, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm less. So that was like kind of my earliest indication. And then when I was 11 and a half, we were playing disability celebrity bingo in a social skills class where we were learning that like Michael Jordan had ADHD, Dan Aykroyd had autism. And that was actually the first time I found out I had autism.
Whoa. How would you describe how autism is with you?
Yeah, so I didn't start speaking complete sentences until I was about 7, and there was a lot of isolation. There was severe sensory integration dysfunctions. I wore noise canceling headphones in most of my classes. I would wear sunglasses indoors due to bright lights. Now today, autism impacts me more than anything in transition situations. A lot of people come up to me today and they say, "You have autism, but you don't look like you have autism." But I was able to overcome a lot of my obstacles because of 15 years of occupational physical speech, music, and theater therapy growing up during my adolescence.
Yeah, one mantra that your parents used a lot was no problems, just solutions.
Yeah, my mom actually started an LLC based on that perspective. As an urban city planner, she wanted to make sure that she could always find a solution, regardless if it was for me or for anyone in our community. And without her, one of my greatest advocates, along with my dad, I wouldn't be here speaking with you today.
Speaking of speaking, how did you go from getting a handle on how communication works with you and becoming someone who professionally speaks for a living? Can you talk about that arc?
Yeah, theater was something that tremendously helped me growing up on the autism spectrum. Not only being able to play different characters and finally getting out of my own eyes and being able to understand other perspectives, my world became so much easier to understand knowing that there were multiple perspectives. But then also just being on stage, there's never been a bigger rush to me than being able to perform. And as I got older, I performed in over 20 plays going into high school, was the lead of several of my school plays. And when I started learning more about the disability community, I was like, there's 1 in 5 Americans who have some form of disability, and a lot of them are being underserved in our community. So changed career paths, and I still got to keep my love of being on stage, but now I get the opportunity to make people more educated and aware about people with differences. So it's been truly, truly amazing, whether that's speaking about my children's book to a pre-K class to educate them on autism, or speaking to Google about the ROI benefits of hiring talented autistic people in the workplace. Every single day, like we say, it's a spectrum. Every single day is different.
Yeah, I mean, I think about how people who don't know any better may not see you as someone who fits the mold of how they define autism. In fact, you've said autism can't define me. I define autism. When did you start to feel that shift?
When I was about 19, I was a college freshman, and I had never told anyone that I was on the autism spectrum. So long story short, I wanted to become an advocate, and I realized this whole idea around neurodiversity, which no one had really brought up to me in high school or before then. So I decided I wanted to really take on this and understand that autism, while gave me a lot of limitations growing up, has given me some of my best key strengths today. And that's kind of when that whole autism can't define me. It was actually during that speech I gave in an oral communication class my freshman year of college. When I ended the presentation, we had to speak for 5 minutes about a topic we were passionate about. I picked autism, and I told my peers for the first time that autism is something I have, but it can't define me, and I define autism. And then later on, it became like my mantra, even 18 years later, now as a 37-year-old autistic adult.
Now, you're not only a public speaker and author, but you're also a consultant on Love on the Spectrum. Now, I freaking love this series. I've watched every moment of all of them that are available. I can't get enough of it. I feel so connected to it. I feel excited about it. I feel plugged into it. I also love getting to know more people who have autism and just the varied parts of their lives, whether they're dating or not, which is the conceit of the show, is that they're setting up people to date who are on the autism spectrum and then some. And so I would love to hear about when you were connected to Love on the Spectrum. What kind of advice did you have for them, and what did you see that maybe they could have done better?
So I ran a book called Autism and Falling in Love based on years of trying to find my love on the spectrum. And they were in Australia doing a show called Love on the Spectrum Australia. And I reached out to them saying, how can I get involved? How can I help? I sent them my book and we started to have a conversation. And when they came to the US, I was talking to them about some of the consulting work I've done with Warner Brothers and HBO. And they were kind of like, so how can we do this with you? So I sent them a one sheet prospectus of like some of the services I offered. And then next thing I knew, they were like, would you like to be a paid consultant on the show as it comes to the US? So I did sensitivity training with the entire crew on meeting each and every single one of these amazing autistic individuals where they are in their development. So we can make sure that they're having the best dates possible in the hopes of pursuing romantic relationships for the first time, while also working with the director behind the scenes while we're filming every single episode to make sure that if he has any questions and needs a first person perspective from someone who has autism, that I could provide that to him. As someone who doesn't have a family connection to the cause, he thought that was really, really important to include. And it's just been a blessing. I mean, we're going into season 4 now. We're almost wrapping production on that. Hopefully it will be on 2026. And I hope this is just a show we can continue to share with the world to show that, one, autistic people don't lack empathy. Some of the autistic people I know are some of the most empathetic people in the world, the Tanners, the Connors, the Dannys of the world. There's just so many amazing people on this show, and I'm just so glad to have a small part in what makes this show what it is.
Do you believe in love at first sight?
Wait, in what? I'm sorry?
Love at first sight, it means like...
What does that mean?
It means you see somebody and straight away you know that's the person.
Well, no sir. Can I tell you something honest, Kian?
Yeah.
I'm not a love expert.
We have to talk about Temple Grandin.
Sure, yeah. Lots to talk about.
Yeah, you've said that meeting Temple Grandin changed your life. Tell me everything.
Yeah, I met her in Memphis. We were keynoting a conference together, an autism conference, and I have always considered Temple Grandin one of the leading advocates for our autism community. And without her being a role model to me, I would not be in this career. And my entire outlook on autism will look so much different. She has been a pioneer. I obviously watched the movie with her in 2011 starring Claire Danes on HBO, and getting the opportunity to know and now be able to text Temple whenever I have like a question or a thought about autism related stuff, and being on the speaker circuit with her now, it's just been a wild, wild ride. But I think one of the most amazing things about Temple is the amount of empathy that she has for other people. Again, there are so many people in our community who think people with autism lack empathy, but we were getting sushi one day in Memphis, and it's like, when you think Temple, you don't necessarily think sushi, but we literally get out of the car going back to our hotel, and she gives me the biggest hug. And I wasn't expecting that, because Temple, from her movies and from a lot of interviews, it's not a very touchy person. And for her to do that and to just like build a rapport with me in that moment was something I'll never forget. And then also meeting her incredible mom as well. Just what an amazing, amazing family.
When I think about the work that you do, the work that Temple Grandin does, all in your own specific ways that only you can do, I wonder, when you look around at the people who are listening to you, the people who are listening to Temple, and you are maybe flashing forward to your 80s and looking at the world around you, how do you hope the world is different for people who have autism when you're in your 80s as a result of among other things, contributions from you and Temple Grandin?
Well, I think the most important thing is that people can be authentically themselves. We live in a current climate where there's a lot of uncertainty, especially around people who have differences. And we're not only talking about the disability community when we're talking about that, we're talking about gender equality, we're talking about minorities, disability being a minority itself.
Isn't it the largest minority in the world?
It is. Yeah, it's.
And eventually, as long as we keep living, all of us will become disabled.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, in our senior years. So, in the grand scheme of things, I think it's important that we all embrace empathy, teach lessons and compassion to our kids. And being kind to people with disabilities isn't being a hero, it's being a decent human being. I think it's important that we understand human decency doesn't end just with people with disabilities. It's something that we should be striving for in our everyday conversations. Because at the end of the day, autism doesn't stop during the month of April. It's 24/7, 365. But many people go with invisible disabilities who go through hardships that we would never see. So I hope as I continue my work speaking with schools and companies and getting the wonderful opportunity to do that, because like if you told me years ago I'd get paid to speak on stage, I would have thought you were nuts. Getting the opportunity to continue to promote that message, because I think that's where I would love society to go, especially looking 40 years into the future in my 80s.
When you think about little Kerry, like tiny Kerry, who is just wrapping his head around what this whole world is outside and what this whole world is inside, and couldn't have imagined becoming a public speaker, an author, a consultant. I wonder what you wish you could sort of whisper in his ear to let him know that he's going to do just fine and then some.
You're capable. You are capable of doing what you say your mind to in this world, and not in like the cheesy inspirational way, because I think inspiration porn is something that happens a lot in the disability community, but just sticking to your key interests. And as Temple says, and it's one of my favorite quotes from her, interests and talents can turn into careers. Continue to focus on your strengths and make sure to pursue those every single day, because that rang true. And that's how I ended up in my career today, which has been one of the biggest blessings that I've ever been given in my life.
Dr. Kerry Magro, thank you so much for talking with me.
Thank you.
Audacious is always lovingly produced by Jessica Severin DeMartinez, Meg Fitzgerald, and Robin Doyon Aitken at Connecticut Public Radio in Hartford. If this conversation resonated, you might also like the episode we did featuring a young woman with Williams syndrome. That's a rare genetic condition often associated with extraordinary openness, empathy, and joy.
Sometimes I like to laugh really hard. It makes my cheek red. Or like when someone says boo, I laugh. Mommy, try it.
Boo.
I need to laugh because my mom loves me and I love her.
Find everything we've done at ctpublic.org/audacious or wherever you get your podcasts. Stay in touch with me on the socials at Kyone Wolf. And if you've ever had a thought that went something like, that would make a really great Audacious episode, let us know. Audacious@ctpublic.org. Peace.